312 BC, Italy. The sky opened as if the gods themselves had torn it apart. Rain poured, not gentle rain, brutal, relentless, world-drowning rain. And the world's most powerful army, the Roman legions, fought that day not against an enemy, but against something far more merciless: mud. The empire's arteries were clogged. The army could not advance. Messages could not reach command. Rome was suffocating where it stood. Everyone was considering retreat. But in the Senate, a blind old man rose to his feet, Senator Appius Claudius Caecus. Blind, but he saw a future no one else could see. He slammed the table and gave the order that would change the course of history. We will dig into the earth. We will pierce through mountains. We will drain the swamps. And we will build such a stone river that 2,000 years from now, people will still walk upon it. The chamber fell silent, because where Appius wanted to build his road lay the deadly Pontine marshes. Those swamps swallowed everything that entered. Engineers called it impossible. But how did the Romans, without modern machinery, build a floating road over that lethal swamp? Why do their roads, built with volcanic ash, still stand while today's concrete cracks within 50 years? We are picking up the shovel now, descending into the foundation of that legendary road, the Via Appia. This is not a story of stones. This is a story of will. Make sure to like this video and walk with us on history's route. Tell me in the comments, was it the swords that made Rome an empire, or the roads that carried those swords?
Spring, 312 BC. The Roman Senate. Chaos, shouting, panic. The Samnite Wars were dragging on, not because the Samnites were stronger, but because Rome's army was drowning in logistics. Supplies could not reach the front. Soldiers marched through mud that swallowed their sandals. Cavalry horses broke their legs in unseen holes. The war was not being lost on the battlefield. It was being lost on the road to the battlefield. Senator Appius Claudius Caecus sat in darkness. Literally. He was blind, had been for years. Some said a curse, others said disease. But his mind was sharper than any man with sight. He heard the Senate arguing, heard the fear, heard the weakness. "We should negotiate peace," one senator said. "The Samnites are too entrenched." "We should wait for summer," another offered, "when the roads dry." Appius arose, slowly. His servants guided him to the speaking platform. The chamber quieted. When the blind senator spoke, people listened, because he saw things others did not. Senators, his voice cut through the room like iron. You speak of roads drying, of waiting for nature's permission. But Rome does not wait. Rome does not ask. Rome commands. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Our problem is not the Samnites. Our problem is the earth beneath our feet. We march on dirt. Dirt becomes mud. Mud becomes defeat. So we will no longer march on dirt. "What do you propose?" the consul asked. Appius turned his blind eyes toward the voice. "A road. But not a dirt path, a stone highway, from Rome to Capua, 132 miles, straight, permanent, indestructible." Laughter, actual laughter from some senators. One stood up, mockingly polite. "Senator Appius, with respect, do you know how much that would cost? The Treasury cannot. The Treasury can afford to lose this war, can afford our legions stuck in mud while barbarians laugh at us, can afford Rome's reputation crumbling because we cannot move our own army. Silence.
I propose, Appius continued, that we build a road so perfect, so permanent, that our armies will fly across it. Supplies will flow like rivers. Messages will travel at the speed of horses, not the speed of mud. And when our enemies see what we have built, they will know Rome does not adapt to nature. Rome changes nature. The Senate voted. Barely passed. Many thought it was insane, a waste of resources, the dream of a blind man who could not see reality. But Appius Claudius was appointed censor, given authority over public works, and the first thing he did was summon the chief engineer, a man named Decimus, 35 years old, brilliant, practical, and about to attempt the impossible. Decimus entered Appius's private chamber. Maps covered the tables, or rather, what blind men used instead of maps, raised wooden models of terrain. Appius's fingers traced the landscape. Decimus, Appius said without looking up, I have a question. When you build a road, what is the enemy? Decimus thought carefully. Terrain, sir. Hills, valleys, rivers. Wrong. Appius's finger stopped. The enemy is compromise. Every time we curve around a hill, we compromise. Every time we follow the easy path, we compromise. And compromise, Decimus, is death by 1,000 cuts. Sir, if we do not curve around obstacles, we must go through them. That is, significantly more difficult. Difficult. Appius almost smiled. Decimus, do you know what makes Rome different from every other city? We do not accept difficulty as an answer. We accept it as a challenge. This road will be straight, perfectly straight. If a mountain is in the way, we tunnel. If a valley blocks us, we fill it. If a swamp tries to swallow us, we drown the swamp instead. Decimus stared at the blind senator. The man was serious, completely serious. Sir, the surveying alone is already being prepared, Appius interrupted. I am giving you 50 surveyors, 3,000 laborers, 500 engineers, unlimited budget, and one rule. This road goes straight. No curves, no compromises, straight. Decimus left that meeting with a knot in his stomach. He had just been ordered to fight nature itself. And nature, historically, did not lose.
But as he walked through Rome's muddy streets, watching carts stuck axle deep, watching merchants cursing flooded roads, watching the empire literally bogging down, he understood. Appius was right. Rome needed this, not wanted, needed. The next morning, Decimus assembled his team. In a field outside Rome, he unveiled the tool that would change engineering forever. It looked simple, absurdly simple. A wooden cross, 4 arms, plumb lines hanging from each arm. That was it. This, Decimus announced, is called a groma. The surveyor stared. That is a cross with strings? This cross with strings, Decimus said, will allow us to measure perfectly straight lines across 132 miles. Watch. He planted the groma in the ground, aligned the plumb lines, sighted down one arm toward a distant hill, marked the spot, moved forward, repeated. Each time, perfectly aligned, no deviation, no curve. With this tool, Decimus explained, we can mark a line so straight that if you stand at one end and look to the other, you will see our destination, no matter what is in the way. What if a mountain is in the way? A young surveyor asked. Decimus looked at him. Then we will see the mountain, clearly, directly, and we will remove it. The surveying began immediately.
Teams fanned out across the countryside, planting gromas every 100 meters, creating a line, a geometric impossibility made real. Local farmers watched in confusion as Romans hammered stakes into their fields, measuring angles, ignoring all natural contours. "What are you doing?" one farmer demanded. "Building a road," a surveyor replied. "But the road goes this way," the farmer pointed to an existing dirt path that curved around his property. Not anymore. Within a month, the line was complete, 132 miles marked with wooden stakes, perfectly straight. And Decimus stood at the starting point, looking down that line, seeing stakes vanish into the distance. He had just drawn a geometric line across the real world. Now came the hard part, actually building it. Because marking where a road should go is easy. Constructing it to last 2,000 years? That required something Rome had never attempted before. Something that would push Roman engineering to its absolute limit. Surgery, not on a body, on the earth itself.
May 312 BC, 10 miles south of Rome. The excavation began. But this was not normal digging. This was archaeological precision applied to virgin earth. Decimus stood at the marked line, looking at 3,000 laborers waiting for orders. He knew what Rome expected, a road built fast. But he also knew what Appius demanded, a road built forever. Speed versus permanence. And Decimus chose permanence. "Dig," he ordered. The workers hesitated. "How deep, sir?" "Until you cannot dig any more." Confusion spread through the ranks. Normal roads required shallow trenches, maybe 1 foot deep. Lay some gravel, lay some stones, done. But Decimus was pointing at the ground and saying something insane. "We dig until we hit bedrock, solid rock, the bone of the earth. That is our foundation." A foreman stepped forward. "Sir, that could be 6 feet down, maybe more. That will take months." "Then we have months of work ahead." Decimus's voice was iron. "I am not building a road for next year. I am building a road for eternity. Dig." The sound that followed would echo across the countryside for weeks. Thousands of shovels, pickaxes, mattocks biting into Italian soil. The trench they carved was not a ditch. It was a surgical incision, perfectly straight, perfectly aligned with the groma stakes, 4 meters wide, descending deeper and deeper. Workers hit clay, kept digging, hit sand, kept digging, hit wet soil that tried to collapse back, kept digging. Some reached bedrock after 3 feet, others after 8, but Decimus refused to proceed until every section of that 132-mile line had reached the unshakable foundation. A young laborer, exhausted, bleeding from blistered hands, finally asked the question everyone wondered. "Sir, why so deep? Are we building a road or a grave?" Decimus walked to the edge of the trench, looked down at the exposed bedrock. "Neither. We are building the foundation of Rome's future. Every road that fails does so because its foundation betrays it. Water seeps in. Frost heaves the stones. Roots invade. The road dies from below. But if we build on bedrock, on the skeleton of the earth itself, water cannot reach us. Roots cannot invade. Time cannot kill what is built on stone." The laborer did not fully understand, but he returned to digging because Decimus had that rare quality. He made men believe impossible things were merely difficult. By July, the trench was complete, a scar across the landscape, 4 meters wide, averaging 5 feet deep, exposing bedrock for 132 miles. Farmers who lived along the route stood at the edges, staring down into the wound carved through their land.
"What madness is this?" one whispered. "Roman madness," another replied, "the worst kind, the kind that works." But the trench was only the beginning, because now came the part that would separate Roman engineering from every civilization before them, the part that modern engineers still study with awe. Layering, not random, not improvised, systematic, scientific, deliberate. Decimus had spent months studying every failed road in Italy, every cracked stone, every sunken path, every collapsed bridge, and he had learned one universal truth. Roads fail because they are treated as a single entity. But they are not. A road is an organism, multiple systems working together, and if one system fails, the entire road dies. So Decimus designed something revolutionary, not a road, a stratified structure. 4 distinct layers, each with a specific purpose, each supporting the layer above, each protecting the layer below. He gathered his engineers and drew in the dirt. Listen carefully. This is not construction. This is architecture. We are not piling stones. We are creating a machine that carries weight, sheds water, resists time, and heals itself. Heals itself? An engineer questioned. You will see. Decimus pointed to the trench. Layer 1, the foundation. We call it stutamen. Large stones, the size of a human head, irregular, jagged, placed directly on bedrock and locked together. This layer does not move, ever. It is the spine. Workers began hauling massive stones, limestone, basalt, whatever was locally available and impossibly heavy. They lowered them into the trench, fitting them together like a 3-dimensional puzzle. No mortar, just mass, just gravity, just stones. So large and so tightly interlocked that the earth itself could not shift them. Week after week, the stutamen grew, a foundation of giants. And workers who had doubted Decimus began to understand. This was not a road. This was a statement. Rome was building something that would outlast empires. But the foundation was only the first layer. 3 more remained, and the next one would introduce the substance that made Roman roads immortal.
August 312 BC. The foundation was complete. Massive stones locked together across 132 miles. But Decimus knew that brute strength alone was not enough. The road needed something else, something that would bind the layers together, something that would turn individual stones into a unified whole. Rome needed to invent concrete. And they did, by accident. A supply cart arrived from the Bay of Naples. Inside, barrels of strange gray powder, volcanic ash from Mount Vesuvius. The locals called it pulvis putiolanus, pozzuoli powder. Later, history would call it pozzolana. A worker opened a barrel, confused. What is this? Ash? Mix it with lime, Decimus ordered. Add water, see what happens. The worker obeyed, poured the ash into a basin, added crushed limestone, added water, stirred. At first, nothing, just gray sludge. But then slowly, the mixture began to thicken, harden, transform into something that was neither liquid nor solid, but something in between. It is becoming stone, the worker whispered. Decimus smiled. This was the secret. Volcanic ash contained silica compounds that reacted with lime and water to create a chemical bond stronger than the individual components. Not just mixed, fused, on a molecular level. This, Decimus announced to his engineers, is Rudus, layer 2. We will cover the statumen with this mixture, add gravel for texture, and when it hardens, it will become a single piece, unbreakable. The work began immediately. Thousands of workers mixed pozzolana, lime, and water in massive quantities, added crushed rock and gravel, poured it over the statumen foundation. The mixture filled every gap, every crevice, binding the large stones into a monolithic base. But something strange happened. In areas where the mixture was exposed to moisture, it did not weaken, it strengthened. The water triggered additional chemical reactions. The concrete became denser, harder, almost crystalline. An engineer noticed this and reported to Decimus, "Sir, the sections near the marshes are hardening faster than the dry sections." Decimus examined the phenomenon, broke off a piece of the marsh-exposed concrete. It was incredibly hard, denser than the dry samples. Water is making it stronger? It appears so, sir. This was revolutionary. Every other building material weakened with water. Wood rotted, iron rusted, stone eroded. But Roman concrete became stronger. It was self-healing, self-improving. The longer it existed, the more indestructible it became. "This changes everything," Decimus said quietly. "We are not just building a road, we are building something that improves with time." September arrived. Layer 2 was complete. The rudus had hardened into a solid mass. Workers could walk on it without leaving footprints. It felt like walking on stone, because it was stone, man-made stone. But Decimus was not satisfied. "The rudus is strong, but rigid. We need flexibility, a cushion, layer 3. This layer, called nucleus, was finer, smaller stones, sand, crushed brick, mixed with more pozzolana concrete, but in a different ratio, less rock, more ash. The result was a layer that could absorb impact without cracking. When heavy carts rolled over, the nucleus would compress slightly, distributing weight across the entire structure instead of concentrating stress on a single point. Think of it as a muscle. The statumen is bone, the rudus is tendon, the nucleus is muscle, it flexes. Workers laid the nucleus carefully, compacted it with heavy wooden rollers, made sure it was perfectly level. This layer was crucial. If uneven, water would pool. If too thick, it would crack under weight. If too thin, it would not cushion properly. Decimus personally inspected every mile, walked the entire length, felt for imperfections with his feet. Where he found problems, he ordered sections torn out and rebuilt. Perfection was not optional. October. 3 layers complete. The road was already functional. Carts could drive on it. Horses could gallop. But it was not finished. Because the final layer, the surface, would determine whether this road lasted 50 years or 2,000. And for that, Decimus needed the hardest stone in Italy, basalt. Black, dense, nearly impossible to carve, but absolutely indestructible.
The search began, and with it the most difficult phase of construction, because cutting thousands of tons of basalt into interlocking shapes required not just strength, but geometric precision beyond anything Rome had attempted.
October, 312 BC. Quarries north of Rome. Thousands of workers surrounded a massive basalt deposit. Black stone, volcanic, so hard that iron tools bounced off its surface. But Decimus needed it, because basalt was the only stone tough enough to withstand centuries of iron-wheeled carts, horse hooves, and legionary boots. The problem was simple. How do you cut stone that breaks your tools? The answer was not simple. It required fire, water, and patience. Workers would heat the basalt with massive fires for hours. The stone would expand, then suddenly dump cold water on it. The stone would contract violently. Thermal shock. Cracks would appear. Not random cracks, controlled fractures along natural stress lines. Then came the chisels. Bronze, not iron. Softer, but more precise. Workers would follow the cracks, splitting the basalt into manageable blocks. Each block weighed hundreds of pounds. Each block had to be transported 20 miles to the construction site. But weight was not the challenge. Shape was. Because Decimus was not laying flat stones. He was creating an interlocking puzzle. Each basalt block was carved into a polygonal shape, 5 sides, 6 sides, irregular but precise, so that when placed together, they locked like teeth. No gaps, no movement, no possibility of individual stones shifting. "Why not make them square?" a stone carver asked, exhausted from the complexity. "Squares are easier." Decimus picked up 2 square blocks, placed them side by side. "Push one." The carver pushed. The stone slid easily. Gap appeared. Decimus then picked up 2 irregular polygonal blocks, fitted them together. "Now push." The carver pushed. The stone did not move, could not move. The irregular edges locked against each other. "That is why," Decimus said. "Squares are easier, but easy fails. We do not build easy, we build eternal." November. The first mile of surface stones arrived. Workers began laying them on the nucleus layer. But Decimus had one more requirement. Insane, precise, absolutely critical. No gaps, not even a knife blade. The foreman stared. "Sir, stone is imperfect. Small gaps are inevitable." "Make them perfect." What followed was painstaking agony. Each basalt block had to be fitted against its neighbors with microscopic precision. If gaps existed, workers had to carve the edges until they disappeared. A single mile of surface required 3 weeks, not because of the weight, but because of the precision. But there was a reason for the madness. Gaps allowed water. Water allowed ice. Ice expanded. Expansion cracked stone. One small gap could, over decades, destroy an entire section of road. So Decimus accepted no gaps. By December, the first completed section was revealed. Workers stepped back and stared. The surface was not flat. It was curved, slightly, almost imperceptibly, higher in the center, sloping down toward the edges. "It looks wrong," someone muttered. Decimus smiled. "Wait for rain." They did not have to wait long. That afternoon, clouds opened, rain poured, and the workers watched in amazement as water hit the road's center and immediately flowed toward the edges. Did not pool, did not sit, flowed into carefully constructed drainage ditches running parallel to the road. The curve was called camber, and it was genius. A flat road holds water. Water seeps into cracks, freezes, destroys. But a cambered road sheds water like a tiled roof, keeps the surface dry, keeps the underlayers protected. "Water," Decimus said, watching the rain drain perfectly, "is the road's cancer, and we just made our road waterproof." But one section remained incomplete, the most dangerous section, the section everyone said was impossible, the section that would determine whether Appius's vision was genius or delusion. The Pontine Marshes. 15 miles of swamp, deep, treacherous, bottomless in places. The road had reached its edge and stopped. Because you cannot build on water. You cannot build on mud. You cannot build on a surface that swallows everything.
unless you change the rules, unless you make the swamp carry the road instead of consuming it, unless you do what no civilization had ever attempted: build a floating road. And Decimus had exactly one idea how. An idea so radical that even his engineers thought he had lost his mind. December 312 BC, the edge of the Pontine Marshes. Decimus stood at the end of the completed road, staring at the nightmare ahead. 15 miles of swamp, black water, thick mud, vegetation that hid sinkholes. Romans called it Palus Pomptina, the place where roads go to die. Behind him, the perfect road. Ahead, liquid earth. The contrast was brutal, and the Senate was losing patience. Messages arrived daily. "Why have you stopped? Finish the road!" Decimus could not explain in a letter what he was about to attempt, so he gathered his engineers at the swamp's edge and spoke plainly. "We cannot drain this. Too large, too deep. We cannot go around it. Appius demands straight. So we have one option. We build on top of it." Silence. Then nervous laughter. "Sir, you cannot build on water." "I know. So we will give the water something solid to hold. We will create an artificial bottom." The plan was insane. Thousands of oak trees would be cut down, sharpened into stakes, driven into the marsh bed like a forest of wooden pillars, so close together that they formed an artificial platform. Then, on top, the 4-layer road system. "But, sir," an engineer protested, "wood rots, especially in water." Decimus nodded. "Normally, yes, but only if exposed to air and water together. If wood is completely submerged, starved of oxygen, it does not rot. It petrifies, becomes almost stone." "How do you know this?" "Venice." Decimus had studied reports from the northern marshes where fishermen build homes on submerged pilings, centuries old, still standing. "If we drive the stakes deep enough below the waterline, they will last forever." The work began. Loggers felled ancient oak forests. Each tree became dozens of stakes, sharpened to points, 8 feet long, thick as a man's thigh, transported to the marsh edge by the thousands. Then came the brutal part, driving them in. Workers waded into the swamp, waist-deep in black water, leeches attaching to their legs, unable to see what lay beneath. They positioned stakes vertically. Then teams with massive hammers drove them down. Boom, boom, boom. The sound echoed across the marsh like war drums. Each stake had to be driven until it hit solid ground beneath the mud, sometimes 3 feet down, sometimes 12. Workers used sounding poles to measure depth. Where it was too deep, they drove multiple stakes bundled together. January 311 BC, 3 months into the marsh work, 20,000 stakes driven. The platform was taking shape, a wooden grid submerged beneath the water. Workers could now walk across the swamp by stepping from stake to stake, but it was not finished, because stakes alone would not support a stone road. Decimus ordered the next phase. Fill the gaps. Between every stake, pour rock and gravel. Create a solid base. Thousands of tons of stone were dumped into the marsh. It disappeared into the mud. More was added, and more, until finally the stone stopped sinking. The submerged platform of stakes was catching it, holding it, creating a stable foundation where none should exist. But the genius move came next. Decimus ordered pozzolana concrete poured directly into the marsh water. His engineers thought he had gone mad,
"Sir, concrete needs to dry. Water will ruin it." Watch. The pozzolana mixture was dumped into the water, and something miraculous happened. Instead of dissolving, it reacted. The volcanic ash, meeting water, began its chemical transformation. The lime bonded with the silica, and slowly, over days, the submerged concrete hardened, not into weak paste, into rock, harder than if it had dried in air. "It is working," an engineer whispered. "The water is making it stronger." Decimus nodded. "The swamp thinks it is drowning our road. Instead, it is feeding it." By March, the impossible had become real. A stone road floating on wooden pillars, anchored by underwater concrete. Carts rolled across it. Horses galloped. The surface did not sink, did not shift. The marsh had been conquered, not by draining it, but by building on top of it. Rome had just invented offshore construction, 2,300 years before oil rigs. But one final test remained, the test Appius had demanded from the beginning. Would the road do what it was built for? Would it carry Rome's legions faster than any army had ever moved?
April 311 BC. The road was complete, all 132 miles, from Rome to Capua. 4 years of work, thousands of laborers, millions of stones. And now, the moment of truth. The test that would prove whether Appius Claudius had been a visionary or a madman. A Roman legion was ordered to march the Via Appia. Full equipment, full speed. The same journey that had taken 8 days through mud would now be measured on stone. Dawn. The legion assembled at Rome's gates. 5,000 men, full armor, packs, weapons. They had heard rumors about the road, whispers that it was smooth as marble, straight as an arrow. But soldiers believe nothing until they experience it. The commander gave the order, "Forward, march." The first footsteps, the first moment boots met basalt. And the sound, that sound, tack, tack, tack. Not the squelch of mud, not the crunch of gravel. The sharp, clean percussion of iron-nailed sandals striking stone. 5,000 pairs of feet, all hitting in rhythm. The sound carried for miles. The legion began to accelerate. Normally, after an hour of marching, soldiers slowed. Feet sank into soft ground, energy drained fighting uneven terrain. But on the Via Appia, the stone pushed back. Every step returned energy. The road was not just a surface. It was a springboard. 2 hours, the legion had covered 10 miles. Normally, they would be exhausted. Instead, they were fresh. The road's smoothness meant no wasted energy, no stumbling, no adjusting for holes or rocks. Just perfect mechanical forward motion. 4 hours, 20 miles. The commander could not believe it. His men were moving at cavalry speed, without horses, just stone and determination. By evening, they reached Capua. Total time, 14 hours. Total distance, 132 miles, at a pace that should have been impossible for infantry. The commander sent a message back to Rome. The road works. It does not work a little, it works perfectly. We moved faster on foot than we have ever moved on horseback through normal terrain. This is not a road. This is a strategic weapon. Appius Claudius received the message in his villa. The blind senator ran his fingers over the words. He did not smile, did not celebrate, simply nodded. Good, build another. Because Appius understood what others did not yet grasp. The Via Appia was not just a road to Capua, It was a prototype, a proof of concept, and Rome was about to build 250,000 more miles of them. The economic impact was immediate. Merchants who had taken weeks to transport goods from Capua could now do it in 2 days. Trade exploded. Prices dropped. Roman markets flooded with products from southern Italy. Money flowed like the rain that could no longer stop it. But more importantly, military impact was devastating. Before the Via Appia, deploying legions took weeks, planning around weather, hoping roads stayed passable. Now, Rome could move armies at will. Rain, shine, winter, summer, irrelevant. The roads did not care about seasons. Enemy states watched in horror. Rome had not just built better roads. Rome had eliminated distance as a defensive barrier. You could no longer hide behind bad roads or rainy season. Rome could reach you, anytime, anywhere. Within a generation, the Samnites surrendered, not because Roman soldiers were better, but because Roman logistics were unbeatable. You cannot win a war if your enemy can move twice as fast as you are. The Via Appia became a model. Engineers studied it, copied it, improved it. More roads were commissioned. Via Flaminia to the north, Via Aurelia along the coast, Via Latina inland. Each one following the same principles. Straight, deep foundation, 4 layers, cambered surface, drainage. By 200 BC, Italy was covered in a web of stone roads, perfectly maintained, constantly patrolled. Rest stations every 15 miles. Fresh horses at each station. A messenger could travel from Rome to the northern border 400 miles in under 3 days. Information moved at the speed of hoofbeats. Orders reached generals within hours, not weeks. Rome had invented high-speed communication, and with it, they conquered the Mediterranean. But roads require maintenance, and here, Rome revealed another genius innovation. They did not wait for roads to break. They prevented breaking.
250 BC, 40 years after the Via Appia's completion. The road was not just standing, it was thriving. While other civilizations watched their roads crumble within decades, Roman roads seemed immune to time. The secret was not magic, it was obsession. Rome created the world's first highway maintenance system, not reactive, preventative. Inspectors walked every mile of every road, weekly, looking for cracks, displaced stones, drainage problems. Problems were fixed immediately, not next month, not next year, that day. A single displaced basalt block could, if ignored, create a gap. Gap allows water. Water creates ice. Ice cracks adjacent blocks. One problem becomes 10. 10 becomes 100. So Rome tolerated 0 problems. Special crews traveled the roads constantly. Stonemasons, concrete mixers, drainage specialists. They carried tools, materials, and authority to repair anything immediately. A traveler might pass a road crew and see them replacing a single stone, just one, because that one stone had settled 2 millimeters lower than its neighbors. 2 millimeters, a worker once questioned his supervisor. No one will notice. The supervisor pointed down the road. In 50 years, that gap will be 10 centimeters. In 100 years, this section will collapse. We fix it now, or our grandchildren fix it at 10 times the cost. Choose. They fixed it now. Always now. This philosophy of instant maintenance was expensive, but road failure was more expensive. A collapsed section meant delayed armies, lost trade, angry citizens.
Prevention was cheaper than cure. But maintenance alone could not explain why Roman roads outlasted everything else. There was something deeper, something in the materials themselves, something modern engineers did not discover until 1960. An American research team studying the Via Appia took core samples, brought them to a laboratory, analyzed the chemical composition of the 2,000-year-old concrete. What they found shocked the scientific community. The Pozzolana concrete was not degrading, it was improving. At a molecular level, the volcanic ash was still reacting, slowly, over centuries, creating new crystalline structures, filling microfractures. Self-healing. Modern concrete cracks because it is static. Once poured, the chemical reactions stop. The material is fixed, inert. It can only degrade. But Roman concrete remained chemically active for centuries. Every time water seeped into a tiny crack, the Pozzolana reacted with it, depositing new mineral crystals. The crack sealed itself. "This is incredible," the lead researcher wrote. "They accidentally invented a self-repairing material. Modern concrete lasts 50 years. Roman concrete improves for 2,000. But the discovery came too late for Rome, because by 1960, the empire that built those roads had been dead for 1,500 years. The roads outlived their creators, outlived the civilization, outlived the language. 476 AD. The Western Roman Empire fell. Barbarians swept through Italy, palaces burned, libraries destroyed, aqueducts broken. But the roads? The roads remained. Because you cannot burn stone, cannot loot geometry, cannot destroy permanence. Medieval travelers walked Roman roads and believed giants had built them. No way humans could create something so perfect. They called them giant roads, feared them as supernatural. Some refused to use them, believing they were cursed. But most people kept walking on them. Because even 1,000 years after Rome fell, those roads were still the best way to travel. Smoother than any medieval road, straighter, more reliable. A crumbling Roman road was better than a new medieval one. Renaissance engineers rediscovered Roman techniques, read Vitruvius, studied surviving roads, tried to replicate them, failed. They had the knowledge, but not the discipline, not the obsessive perfectionism, not the willingness to dig to bedrock, not the patience to fit stones without gaps. Industrial Revolution. Finally, modern engineering caught up. Machinery could dig deep trenches. Factories could produce cement. Precision tools could cut stone. Engineers built roads that rivaled Roman quality. But they still did not last as long, because modern concrete was optimized for strength, not longevity, for cost, not permanence. Roads were built to last 30 years, then be replaced. Planned obsolescence, the opposite of Roman philosophy. Today, in Italy, you can still walk on the Via Appia, 2,300 years old. Parts are worn smooth by millions of footsteps, but the foundation remains solid. The basalt stones still locked together. The cambered surface still sheds water. The road still works. Not as a museum piece, as a road.
Modern day. Rome. A tourist walks the Via Appia Antica, the ancient Appian Way. Beneath her feet, basalt stones worn smooth by 2,300 years of footsteps. She does not know she is walking on genius, does not know that the stone she just stepped on was placed by a Roman engineer who has been dead for 23 centuries, does not know that this road changed the world. But it did, in ways that echo even now. Every highway system on Earth descends from Roman roads. The concept of a national road network, Roman. The idea of government-maintained infrastructure, Roman. The understanding that transportation is not just convenience, but the foundation of civilization, Roman. When Napoleon built his imperial roads across Europe, he studied Roman techniques. When America constructed the interstate highway system in the 1950s, engineers referenced Roman surveying methods. When China built its modern expressway network, they acknowledged the debt to Rome's straight-line philosophy. The influence is not just historical, it is practical. Modern civil engineers still teach Roman road construction as the gold standard, not because it was ancient, because it worked. Because principles discovered 2,300 years ago remain valid today. Deep foundations, layered construction, water management, material science, maintenance culture. But there is something more profound, something beyond engineering. Because the Via Appia was not just about moving soldiers or goods. It was about an idea. The idea that civilization is built on connections. That power comes not just from strength, but from reach. That permanence matters more than speed. Appius Claudius understood this, the blind senator who saw further than anyone. He knew that Rome's true enemy was not Samnites or Gauls. It was distance, isolation, the friction of space. So he built roads that eliminated friction, roads that connected cities, connected cultures, connected time itself. And in doing so, he created the template for every network that followed. Roads led to postal systems. Postal systems led to telecommunications. Telecommunications led to the internet. Same principle, different technology. Connect everything. Make distance irrelevant. Make information flow like water. The Appian Way was the first highway, but it was also the first fiber optic cable, the first satellite network, the first glimpse of a connected world. Roman roads were not just physical infrastructure. They were the physical manifestation of an idea, that human beings are better connected than isolated, that trade is better than war, that communication prevents conflict, that investment in permanence pays dividends across centuries. This is why the roads survived Rome's fall, because they were useful to everyone. Christian pilgrims used them. Muslim traders used them. Medieval merchants used them. Renaissance scholars used them. Anyone who needed to go from point A to point B found that Roman roads remained the best option. For over 1,000 years after Rome died, its roads kept working. Think about that. An infrastructure so well designed that it served civilizations that had nothing in common with its creators, served them better than anything they could build themselves. That is not just engineering. That is transcendence. Today, archaeologists keep discovering lost Roman roads. Not in Italy. Everywhere. Britain, France, Spain, North Africa, Middle East. The network was vast, over 250,000 miles, enough to circle Earth 10 times. And much of it still exists, buried under modern roads, or repurposed, or still in use. In England, many modern highways follow Roman routes exactly. Same paths, same destinations, because Roman surveyors found the optimal routes 2,000 years ago. And optimal does not change. The Appian Way is now a park, protected, preserved. You can walk its length and touch history. See the ruts worn by countless carts. See the milestones marking distance. See the tombs of Romans who wanted to be buried beside the road so travelers would remember them. Because being remembered mattered. Building something permanent mattered.
And they were right. We remember, not because historians wrote about them, because their work remains. Physical, undeniable. You can walk on their achievement, can feel the stones they placed, can travel the path they carved through wilderness and swamp and mountain. This is the final lesson of Roman roads. Legacy is not what you say, it is what you build. Not monuments to ego, infrastructure for everyone. Not statues that topple, systems that serve. Not temporary victories, permanent improvements.
Appius Claudius died in 273 BC, almost blind, quite old. But before his death, he took one final journey, down the Via Appia, the road he had envisioned, fought for, built against all opposition. His attendants described the journey for him, the smoothness, the straightness, the perfection. Appius said nothing, just ran his hand along the stone surface as the cart rolled south, feeling what he could not see, touching permanence. When asked if he was satisfied with his creation, Appius gave the most Roman answer possible. It is acceptable, but the next one will be better. There was no next one for Appius. He died soon after, but Rome kept building. Road after road, century after century, each one trying to exceed the Via Appia. Most failed, some succeeded, but all acknowledged the original, the prototype, the proof that humans could build something that outlasted empires. Today, if you stand on the Via Appia at dawn, when no tourists are present, when the modern world briefly quiets, you can hear something. Not literally, but almost. The echo of iron-nailed sandals, thousands of them, marching south. Tuck, tuck, tuck. The sound of Rome. The sound of legions. The sound of an empire that understood a simple truth. You do not build greatness with weapons. You build it with roads. Roads that last. Roads that connect. Roads that turn impossible into inevitable. The Via Appia was Rome's first highway, but it was also Rome's greatest weapon. Not because it carried soldiers, because it carried an idea. The idea that civilization is measured not by how you destroy, but by what you build. Not by how long you rule, but by how long your work endures. 2,300 years later, the work endures. The stones remain. The road still leads south. And if you listen very carefully, you can still hear it. That rhythmic percussion of iron on stone. The heartbeat of an empire. The sound that changed the world. Tuck, tuck, tuck. Forever.